Welcome back to a new episode of The Wedding Visionary. Today I'm speaking with the lovely Mikayla. She's a stationer in Denver. Thank you so much, Mikayla, for being on the podcast. I'm excited to dive in. Mikayla, tell us a little bit about yourself, as well as this project that you got to do with an amazing photographer. Tell us a little bit about the history, anything that you feel is important.
Yes. So I'm Mikayla Wilson and I own Montana Paper Company, and we are a bespoke studio specializing in all sorts of wedding paper. So anything from your save the date to invitation suite to all the really beautiful and fun details on the day of, such as menus, seating charts, things like that. I have an experience of about 8 years of design experience and have been doing stationery specifically for about 3 years. And I just really love the stories and opportunities that I get when I meet couples, and I really get to convey their vision into their paper. So with this project, I was approached by a really talented team. I was approached by Carrie from Carrie Jean Photography, as well as Bloom Hill Studio and Field 5 Flowers up in Montana. And they just had this really beautiful and unique project that I was thrilled to be collaborative on. So the whole concept was Dutch masters, so art from the 17th century, and then combining that with the idea of the Curio cabinet. And, with every project that I start, I always do really extensive research, and so I really enjoyed learning more about the history behind 17th century art and what makes the Dutch masters masters. And so that really drove my overall design concept.
I have to say, the stationery stopped me in my tracks because it was not only very beautiful, it had a sense of dramatic to it, and seeing the play of light and contrast in the stationery was so beautiful. But it also brought me to think of what else does a stationer do when it comes to creating a beautiful stationery. And so it's so great that you dive into history for this specific stationery, because you can see, if you're looking at it, you can see that there was a blend of 17th century art blending in with the stationery. And so that brings me to ask you, could you walk us through your design process for this project? And how did you balance the vision that Carrie had for you and the stationery?
Yes. So, as I stated, I always begin with research, which led me to really diving into the Dutch masters. And what I learned was how they really master the use of contrast with dark and light to really create a dramatic and intriguing feeling. And I think that was the feeling that Carrie was really going for. The shoot was right around October, so I think we really wanted to touch on the enchantment of the season. So when doing the research, I just really fell in love with a still life by the artist Elias Vandenbrog, and he had created this really beautiful still life of these flowers against this really dark background, and that really intrigued me, and I just wanted to really highlight that in my suite. With everything that I design, I always have what I call the North Star element, and this is just kind of the part of the suite that really ties everything together, and it pulls in all the colors, and it really drives my design. So I had this painting, and then I also love to scour archives, so I was looking for old etchings, really beautiful ornate borders from old books. So I started to dive into all of that, and I was able to, incorporate all this into my suite. I really wanted it to feel timeless and full of history and story. And something else that I really wanted to highlight is the sense of artistry that goes into stationery. And this was really easy to marry with the kind of concept of a curio cabinet, because when you walk, the aisles of an antique store,
Mm-hmm.
so many everyday objects are just filled with so much beauty and artistry.
Yeah.
I think in our society today, we're really driven by haste and convenience. I love to get my Amazon Prime package in 2 days, but I think there's something to be said about time and care and patience that really goes into a well-crafted piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I love that, because you really took time to learn about the history and the artist to be able to actually make a suite that spoke exactly how that artist would do something, right? And then on top of that, you brought Carrie's vision to life for an October project that kind of delved into that moody aspect, but with history. And I want you to talk more about your station, especially this suite. I want you to talk a little bit more about the elements. So that prompts me to ask you, what details or elements of this suite are you most proud of? Is there anything about the project that made you feel like it was truly set apart from anything else?
I think every aspect of this project that I included really has been touched by the human hand. Everything from the handmade paper that is used in the suite, an artisan, a very skilled artisan, created the paper from the letterpress. Letterpress is, a centuries old technique. It's been around since the 15th century. And it takes a really niche skill set to be able to print like that. And it takes a lot of time and care. These artisans really have to hone these skills and learn it. So I think just kind of marrying all these aspects together that are really touched by the human hand was something that I really wanted to explore. And I'm really proud of how it came together. And then I think, also with Carrie taking the pictures, she really styled the flat lay in a way that continued this idea of the curio cabinet. The objects that she used and the way she arranged the florals was just so artful and full of intention. And I think, wedding stationery as a whole always needs to be full of intention and
Exactly. I love that you have a team of artisans behind your stationery too, like the letterpress. That is beautiful. I have gotten back into writing letters. I like writing letters, thank you letters to my friends and family, and I've come to appreciate the texture of paper. Like the quality of paper has been something I've very curious about, but very like it has to be quality. Like I don't want like any cardboard paper that I can get from Michael's or from Joanne Fabrics. I want something that has texture to it, or it just looks like it was made from an artisan and there was more thought to it. And I want the receiver to appreciate it. That, there is some thought form or love form to a piece of paper that has a thank you on it, or just like textured paper or whatever it is, and appreciate what stationers do a little bit more, because I just took a little glimpse understanding that there's quality, in there's so many different styles of paper. There's so many ways of doing paper, which is kind of crazy, but your
totally,
clients probably wouldn't understand it or know that much, right? So it's so beautiful
totally.
that not only do you take the time to understand their history, to embody into their stationery, but you do more of a deep dive. You look into the quality of the paper that they would like. You add heirlooms to what they would like in their paper, or like you incorporate things that would tell their story. And so I want to know a little bit more of, how did you balance incorporating any trends, if there was any trends, with this stationery, with creating something so timeless? And did you include any modern touches to make the suite feel fresh and current?
Yes. So I think that paper is you're right. There's so many different types of paper and weights. And I think that the invitation is really the first kind of tactile and tangible experience that your guests will receive of your wedding, right? It's months before, and it's really there to build anticipation. So when you take the time to select really quality materials, I mean, the paper I use is 100% cotton. It's heavy, it's thick. I think that's a really great way to give the guests a really tangible and, a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
luxury. Paper is a luxury,
Yes.
right? It's a first anniversary gift if you're following the traditional anniversary gifts, because it is such a beautiful product, right? And I think when crafting this suite, I wanted it to feel storied and full of history and very timeless. So we didn't get super trendy, but I think what is trending right now is people are wanting to have weddings reflect their story more. They're, getting
Mm-hmm.
away from cookie cutter. They're really wanting the wedding to reflect who they are as a couple. And so I think that when you have, little elements in your stationery that speak to the feeling you're trying to create, or there's little Easter eggs of your relationship, maybe you have like an heirloom ring from a really treasured grandmother, or you're having your wedding at a venue that your parents got married at. I think that there's so many ways that couples are wanting to really interweave their story into aspects at their wedding, and paper's a great way to communicate that to guests.
I love how you dove into their history or couples' histories or even the history of this stationery too, because I know you touched point in the beginning that you like to go antique shopping. And have you been to the Armadillo, right, in Denver? Or there's some in Colorado. And so I love going to the Armadillo and actually looking at postcards. Like there's always thousands of postcards at antique shops. And so I like looking at postcards because there's pictures in the front of them, but also you get to see what they write. And that is so historical. It's such a piece of history that is beautiful, and that I think because we're so fast paced in this modern age of the world that we're in right now, we send evites, right? And there's nothing wrong with evites. You know, when we get
No.
something out quickly, it's totally fine. But there's such an appreciation and quality and beauty as well as history to having tangible paper in your hand that's curated from your own history and that artisans have put together with love and care, but also with the knowledge of understanding different types of paper or letterpress or embodying it to kind of, have a monogram or whatever of that sort. So I love being able to go to antique stores and seeing these things because there's so much history. And I love that you create a piece of history for clients or for projects because they can essentially frame these things and they can share with their friends and family down the line, or who knows, maybe I'll find it at the antique shop and be like, there's history to it, right? And so I love that.
Yes, I do too. I think it's, it takes time to send somebody a letter, a piece of mail, and it's really an act of loving. It's just a loving act to send someone something that you
Yes.
did with your hand. And so I think that when you're inviting people to your wedding, hopefully you love the people that you're inviting to your wedding, and a really great opportunity to give them, a really beautiful experience. With this week specifically, not only am I thinking about the individual cards, right? I'm thinking about what is it
Mm-hmm.
like to open this letter. And so when designing this particular suite, about the curio cabinet. And when you have a curio cabinet, you have, this kind of glass door and there's all these treasures inside. So I wanted
Yeah.
to translate that into this experience. So the way I, package the suite is I have it layered. You can see all the handmade paper layered together, and then it's wrapped in a vellum sheet with the fine art painting on it. And I think this way it's kind of like a little glimpse like that curio cabinet, but you really have to open it up to see what's inside. And I think that's just a really fun way to give your guests a real experience. It's just thinking about not only the cards, but how do they open it? How does the envelope feel and things like that.
Yeah, and so that brings me to ask Osco, what was the inspiration for inside of the envelope? There's florals, right? There's different types of design on the floral. What was the inspiration for that? I know you took a deep dive into history, but what popped into your brain to put that inside of the envelope?
Yes. Well, as I mentioned, there's always kind of a North Star aspect that I have in every suite. So this is, again, it's talking about, I always have like a North Star that's kind of leading the whole design and really driving the direction we're going to. And this painting just really spoke to me. It's in the public domain and it's a Dutch master painting. So I just thought that was a really great way. When you open the envelope, you have this beautiful painting, and then you kind of see that vellum wrap in there. And then as you take it out, it's kind of this whole composition. So, and I think the colors just really spoke to the feeling that Carrie was trying to establish. And it was just overall a really fun and tactile experience.
It's so beautiful that you came up with that idea to put it inside, to have like a painting inside of the envelope. It just adds another high touch, luxury experience to the station, or not the station, but the envelope. And I love that. I love that there was so many elements about this stationery that you put so much work into. And not a lot of people get to see that behind the scenes, right? Like they don't know what's going in your brain when you're trying to create something very nostalgic and beautiful. There's not, like I was saying before, there's not a lot of appreciation for paper. I mean, back in the day there was, because we would write in our journals and we would write letters, and stuff like that. And now that we're in this age of everything's digital, it's kind of hard to come to terms of writing on paper and sending it by mail. But like you were saying, there's a lovable aspect to it. Being able to send someone that you care for thank you notes with quality paper, because paper is I've come to appreciate it a little bit too much, and I appreciate the work that you do. And I'm so glad that we are having this conversation because it's not only just a few vendors, there's so many vendors behind the scenes that a lot of clients do not get to see. And sometimes stationery is one of those things that people don't understand the appreciation of it. Like there's craftsmanship that comes with doing stationery. And there's also, it takes a person to be able to embody a client and their stationery, make it one. I love the work that you do. And I know the listeners that are listening in are probably like, they're talking about paper and they're talking about a stationery and we don't know what they're talking about. But if you watch it on YouTube, you'll be able to see some glimpse of Mikayla's beautiful work. I'll be sharing a little bit of the photos that Carrie took. But I hope that the listeners understand that there is history and beauty to stationery, but also paper and being able to send a letter. And I hope this encourages people to send letters now, handmade letters, thank you letters to people, because I've been doing it and I've come to appreciate it. I'm going to say this so many times, but I've come to appreciate it a little bit more with this day and age of how things are going, and it's only January. I've come to slow down a bit and think about not only my future, but my history of what I want to leave behind. And paper, sending a thank you note is one of them. And so I'm so glad that we got to talk about this, Mikayla. And last question that I want to ask you is that, was there a memorable moment while working on this design that stood out to you? Perhaps, a moment of inspiration or a unique request from Carrie?
I think what was the most exciting part of this whole process was, at the end, really receiving the pictures back from Carrie, because she just did a beautiful job continuing the story that I was trying to tell. I think it's really important that clients, they choose vendors that really understand the vision and they really trust not only, the client, but there's also a trust between the certain vendors. And Carrie trusted that I would create something beautiful for this, and then I trusted that she would be able to capture what I created. And the way she styled it was so beautiful, and then with the florals designers, everything really comes together. And I think that's just a testament to choosing vendors that really resonate with you and your vision for your wedding, because the truth is there are countless talented people out there, and you really
Yes.
find the person that clicks with you, and then can click with the other vendors to really execute the vision that you're hoping to.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And it comes down to the quality of the vendors, because there's such a beautiful, seamless thing when it comes to vendors working together and just like kind of reading each other's mind, because we know. We know what quality looks like, and we know that we can depend on each other to do things. And it's so fun when you get to work with new vendors for the first time and you instantly just are reading each other's mind, understanding the history behind the client or the project, and knowing how to capture it because you understood the client, but the planner took more time to understand them more intimately, and you had that connection to be able to be like, okay, I understand them a little bit more to be able to photograph it this way. Or as a stationer, I understand them a little bit more to be able to add their heirloom to the stationery. Or maybe a sparrow because the bride loves that. It's a sign to her of like, being loved. Or maybe a cloud or the mountains, whatever it may be. We take every detail of the wedding, and as a cohesive quality team, we understand each other's jobs, but we also understand ourselves and we understand the client. So when all those things tie together, you have a beautiful quality vendor team. And I like that a lot of the people that I've talked to on the podcast have said the same thing. It takes a really good team. And this day and age in the wedding industry, a lot of people want trends, which is fine. You can have a trendy wedding, but you also have to have a quality team to be able to create that trendy wedding, or to be able to create something that's trending, but also you.
100%.
Right. And I feel like I hope this encourages listeners that, a quality team is going to take time, and it's great to give your team time to create beautiful craftsmanship, especially when it comes to stationery. And yes, find vendors or find stationers, in this case, find stationers who will take the time to do what you do, dive into the history and their history and implement them both.
Yeah.
And understand that we appreciate the craft that we do. It's our baby as well. And behind the scenes, we're just like, we hope they love it, but we know we've done 100% or 150% exactly what we would do for anybody else. So thank you so much, Mikayla, for being on the podcast and talking about stationery and sweets. And I hope people are encouraged to walk away and see stationers in a different light, in a different beauty, and understand that you guys hold a different type of artistry, like it's history, And is there anything that you would like to add to about the stationery or even working with your clients?
I think just in general, we love when our clients are wanting to create an experience, right? Your invitations are the first aspect of your wedding. They're a tangible guest experience. So when you want to share yourselves with us and allow us to tell your story, it's so exciting. And, I love the little tidbits. I love to know that your first date was at a Chinese restaurant because maybe that's gonna, make its way to stationery. I think there's just so
Right.
many fun things to learn about you. We'd like to learn about you and connect with you. But this has been such a great conversation, Alicia, and I appreciate you giving, not just me, but just all vendors a platform to really talk about the work and care. It's just we just love what we do. It comes from our hearts and our minds, and it's a piece of us that we're putting out in the world. It's a piece of art. So I think that it's just really great to hear everyone's stories and perspectives.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, especially this project, and how you and Carrie both created such a beautiful project together. And it was so great to just hear the process, what you do and how you do it, and the love and care that you have for this. So thank you so much for just sharing that with us. And I hope that this inspires other people to share their stories a little bit more because, like I've been saying, as vendors, we don't take time to celebrate the craft that we do or the projects that we do or even the weddings because we're always on to the next one when we finish. So thank you, and thank you for listening in.